Sometimes we persevere slowly, quietly, hand in hand, and never giving up. More coming up.
AMAC is the leading conservative advocacy and benefits organization. AMAC gives you access to exclusive benefits, insightful news, and a magazine full of uncensored content. They are pushing back against efforts to defund the police, weaken the borders, and corrupt our youth. But they need your help. Please stand with AMAC at amac.us. That's amac.us.
I'm Mike Slater, MikeSlater.locals.com. This has been the O'Reilly Update Morning Edition.
Hey, my name is Josh, and I've been going to Como Vapor for about the last 5 years or so. But when I first walked into Como Vapor, I just felt like they were my friends. You get to know their team, and they are funny, man. They're good people. They're honest. They're never going to try and upsell you. They know their stuff, and they will get you exactly what it is you need to find an alternative to smoking. If that's what you're looking for, I tell everybody I come across, go to Como Vapor and don't go anywhere else. They've got 2 locations in Columbia, East Nifong, and Business Loop 70.
Como Vapor.
Oh. Once it starts growing, it won't stop until it gets removed. Mold in your home or business can be deadly. And if you discover it, you'll need 2 things: a team of experts and a fast response. You'll need Service Master of Columbia. Not only will Service Master remove the mold, they'll help you figure out how it got there in the first place. So don't wait to mitigate.
Hi, this is Adam Kinzer, the Master of Disaster Recovery with Service Master of Columbia. Call the man in the yellow van at 443-8383.
News, analysis, opinion. We're 93.9 The Eagle, KSSC, Fayette, Columbia, a free service of Zimmer Communications.
Eagle News Time, 6 o'clock.
what is happening.
Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters.
Great news for the American people.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri with Branden Rathert, featuring Stephanie Bell, News Director Brian Houseworth, John Marsh, and Hannah, the producer.
This is why we listen to you.
Get ready, pal.
And now, here's your host, Branden Rathert.
Please, elect the Attorney General of the Senate. Elect that big old boy to be governor.
Biden last night, one of several mistakes he made. He's addressing the nation. He's touring the nation going, look at what I did. Look, I'm forgiving student debt. Look at all these great things I'm doing. He's not doing anything good, and it's affecting every single one of us, even here in Mid-Missouri this morning. Welcome into the show. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I am Branden Rathert. There's Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
Welcome back, man. Glad you are here.
Thank you.
Producer Hannah is here.
What up?
Joined by Mr. Brian Houseworth. John Marsh is here, too. John, were you in Fulton back in 1992 when Mikhail Gorbachev was here? How about that? I'm anxious to hear some of your stories, man. John Marsh, he's hung out with everybody. Reagan at the State Fair in Sedalia has interviewed Sarah Palin, all kinds of folks. Do want to get your insight on that Mikhail Gorbachev. Now, you remember if you're on our, back in my day, I remembered the name Mikhail Gorbachev because I was starting to come into my political understandings and how it affected my life and the life of my parents. Cold War era, Russia, United States. Mikhail Gorbachev spoke in Fulton in 1992. We are going to be highlighting some of that audio coming up here shortly. But first, let's start with Joe Biden last night. Fiery speech in Pennsylvania. So the problem with the opening audio there is Joe's got it wrong. Elect this big old boy to be governor. He's referring to John Fetterman. He's body shaming John Fetterman. Said elect him for governor.
Who's in a very high-profile race against Dr. Oz for the Senate.
And then Josh Shapiro, who's running for governor, he wants you to elect Josh Shapiro for the Senate. That's how he's addressing the crowd. Listen, we make mistakes all the time. Producer Hannah and Stephanie call me Joe Jr. because I get my stuff messed up all the time. Not to the extent that Joe Biden does, and I'm not the leader of the free world. Besides Joe getting facts wrong, he misspoke about AR-15s, talking about the speed of bullets and stuff like that. His hypocrisy, and really the hypocrisy of the entire Democrat Party on display.
Everybody's entitled to be treated with dignity, just simple dignity.
You mean the same guy who recently has been criticizing us, Republicans, supporters of Trump? This guy is saying everybody deserves to be treated with dignity, except for Republicans.
Yeah, when you call everybody a MAGA Republican or ultra MAGA and criticize us, I don't feel like you're treating me with dignity.
That's the definition of hypocrisy. And it's not just Joe. It is the entire Democrat Party. This blew me away. What you're about to hear next from Joe Biden is seriously, and all the dumb things he says and all the mistakes he makes, and Jill Biden saying, no, Joe, over here. Joe Biden shaking hands with invisible people. All that stuff. But when you're on a campaign speech, when you are campaigning for people in your party in Pennsylvania, and by the way, I love the applause there when he gets the offices of the two gentlemen mixed up. The crowd is like, huh?
What?
What? What happened? I don't know what he's talking about. But one of the things he said, amongst a lot of things, but one of the things he said last night, I'm serious, and I want to get your reaction to this, absolutely blew me away. And I'll use the word hypocrisy a lot here, and I apologize, but my goodness, I cannot think of any other way to describe this. Joe Biden, August 30th, 2022, Pennsylvania.
The answer is not defund the police, it's fund the police. Fund the police.
Are you kidding? Joe Biden. We agree with him, by the way. John, who is the party that came up with the whole big defund the police? Who was that? You remember who that was? Cori Bush, 1st District Congresswoman who pays several $100,000 a year for her own protection. Democrats, defund the police. And we saw where they have tried and failed in cities like San Francisco and Seattle and Chicago. Defund the police. Oh, wait, that's not a good idea.
And right here at home in Kansas City, Missouri, a middle-of-the-night vote to try to move money away from law enforcement.
And now, it's almost like when Fox News used to say, Fox News, fair and balanced. Really? This is one of the most hypocritical things I've... Fairly balanced. We balance our fairness as long as it leans his way. For Joe Biden, the representative of the Democrat Party, to say, don't defund the police, we want to fund the police. My goodness, you've got to be kidding. They have nothing else. And the polls right now continue to show that. Unfortunately, we need to convince about 78 to 79 million people come November of 2024. We need to convince about 79 million people. This is incredibly idiotic, and this is really the mouthpiece for the entire party. And I'll go back to even locally, a couple of months ago, following the Dobbs decision by the Supreme Court of the United States, there was a protest. People were protesting a decision by the Supreme Court of the United States. I don't know what they think that they were going to accomplish. And right before they introduced Shamin Schwach, who ran unsuccessfully in a primary in the 47th State Representative District, that's a seat currently held by Chuck Basie. Shamin Schwach lost to Brenden Rathert. She gets up on stage. But that party, the Democrat Party, progressives, on display their foul language and just screaming and yelling. And I was shocked that somebody like Shamin Schwach would get up on stage after all the foul language and calling us people names and things like that, that this politician, who's always running for some kind of office, it seems like, that she would get up on stage and accept the microphone after the things that were said about conservatives and about Supreme Court justice. Frankly, it shocked me. So we see it everywhere. It's just not on a national level. We see it locally, too. Joe Biden, the answer is fund the police. And it was a fiery speech last night. I don't know if you got to see, but he was on. It was a Newt Rockne locker room speech, really, halftime speech. You're down by 31 points. I can imagine it was probably as fiery as this speech that Bill Belichick gave to the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl several years ago, when they were down to Atlanta, had no chance of winning. That's what I imagine that speech was like. Joe Biden. More from his speech in Pennsylvania last night.
Where the hell are we?
So he's criticizing us smart people, by the way. And and they're criticizing and they're doing this. Remember, he's doing the same thing. He was the guy on January 20th, 2021, unity. We got to come together. And he spends more time criticizing us, not just conservative politicians, but us smart people, us conservatives.
Is he criticizing or is he genuinely not sure where he's at?
Thank you, Hannah, because that's how I took it.
Where the hell are we?
And
what state are we in?
It would be like a locker room speech if the coach named the wrong team on the field. If they're like, go out and beat those, wrong team. That's a Joe locker room speech.
Where the hell are we?
It's like Ron Burgundy. Where are we? And he's trying unsuccessfully, Joe is there to make a point. Where are we as a nation? Well, listen, you're the leader of the free world. A stunning majority of Americans do not support you, do not like you. They're freaking out because of where we are financially. And he's trying to make the point, where are we?
And we need a leader. You're the leader. You're supposed to say, here's where we're at and here's where we're going. And that's what gives people confidence. That's what scares other countries enough to not invade close by countries. We need a leader, and we haven't had one for more than a year now.
Where the hell are we?
Can't you see him looking around? No, really, where are we?
This is why his wife, Jill, has to manhandle him to make sure he's in the correct place for things.
It really is. It's just
what the hell's the matter with us?
He was on fire, John.
It doesn't give you any confidence.
Man, it doesn't. And polling, for what polls are worth, well over half of Americans are not happy with where we are. Glad you could be here. Mikhail Gorbachev died time leader of the Soviet Union back then. He gets a lot of credit for ending the Cold War. And I'm hearing there's a lot of news outlets that are forgetting, national news outlets that are forgetting to mention, oh, yeah, and there was a dude here by the name of Ron who had something to do with that, too. John Marsh was in Fulton in 1992 when Mikhail Gorbachev gave here's part of his speech from 1992.
And that this sculpture should be in Fulton.
He said a bunch of good things. I don't know quite what he said, but John, you were there in 1992. Describe that scene that day. Yeah. Yep. Remember Walensky, he was featured on the cover of Time magazine at one point as Time's Man of the Year. And we have an influx of younger listeners here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri on 93.9 The Eagle and 104.5 News Radio 950 KWOS. Back in the 80s, in the height of the Cold War, this isn't just a history thing. This was reality. People like me and John and Brian Hausworth hiding under our school desk every time because we had, today kids have fire drills and you go outside, leave the building. Back in the 80s, man, you hid under your desk as if hiding under your desk was going to protect you from a nuclear attack. Never understood that. Yeah. There's a nuclear. Oh, my God. That's what we did. Let's do a nuclear attack drill, and you hid under your desk. And for extra safekeeping, put your hands on your head, because that will help save you from a nuclear attack.
See, we would do that for earthquake drills.
Yeah,
but not
a nuclear attack. What Gorbachev and Reagan did in the 80s, and how it shapes really the world today and where we are. It is incredibly important stuff to where we are today. It is very important. Coming up 5 minutes from now, we're going to be doing the daily D.C. Rundown with Stephanie Bell. What's underneath the circus tent this morning?
Well, the FBI has been taking quite a bit of heat lately, but Joe's finally
It's sickening to see the new attacks on the FBI, threatening the life of law enforcement agents and their families for simply carrying out the law and doing their job.
More Biden last night in Pennsylvania. As a matter of fact, such a moronic event last night. Stephanie says, you know what? Let's lead with that in this morning's Daily DC Rundown with Stephanie Powell.
So he's finally defending the FBI, and he's saying he's opposed to defunding the police. He's also opposed to defunding the FBI. You know, you can say a lot, but we're going to actually look at your actions. What's more is, I guess Lindsey Graham said, you know, should Trump face prosecution, there'll be riots in the streets. And Biden actually said the idea that you turn on a television and see a congressman saying if such and such happens, there'll be blood on the streets. Where the hell are we? Wait. Isn't it usually the Democrats? How many times have they said that? If such and such happens, we're going to riot, we're going to protest. And then they actually did. I mean,
wow.
It's ridiculous. He said, you know, he's criticizing Lindsey Graham for saying, you know, hey, this is going to be a big deal if Trump gets prosecuted. And it's his side that usually is leading the charge on, we're going to riot if you do anything.
Hypocrisy.
I don't know how else to say it, so I got to rely on a 4-year-old kid to explain it for me.
Ridiculous. Well, there's this new study out, and guess what? I am young people. It is confirming.
Are you still in that demo when you fill out the warranty card?
That Stephanie is officially a young person. So this new thing says that young people are still following the news. They're just not happy about it. And I will take issue with this because the survey of young people is ages 16 to 40.
That's a weird range.
I mean, I don't feel like I'm in the same category as a 17-year-old. I have reasons to follow the news. I'm a business person. I got 3 kids. Anyway, I think they could have broken this down a little bit better, but they are saying a lot of people are getting their media from social media, about 71%. From YouTube and Instagram, though, mainly. Still about 50% of people are reading newspapers, listening to the radio, watching TV, traditional media sources. But they said the real difference here in the survey is that whereas before 53% of people said they enjoy following the news, only 32% now enjoy following the news. I'm blaming that one on Joe, really.
It's kind of like we say here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Man, we've got that demo of 12-year-olds to 85-year-olds. We got that locked down, man. That's quite a crazy demo. By the way, coming up probably about 7:50 this morning, the Fox News channel is making history, and some of this has to do with younger viewers, and this is something that all of us should be paying attention to because pretty soon old dudes like me are going to die.
Yeah, well, Joe Biden, another one of his... What? Wait, hold on.
As it relates to voting conservative, voting the smart way.
Okay, Joe Biden is claiming that his federal student loan forgiveness is helping the nation's racial wealth gap, and people are pointing out, whoa, during the drug war, we incarcerated a lot of people of color, and that excluded them from the Pell Grant program, which is the program that you just gave a bunch of people. So, like the Pell Grant program, mostly white people, because there was a lot of people of color affected, and they were literally could not apply for those programs. And people are saying, no, your forgiveness plan is not helping people of color.
Jeez. By the way, and I want to thank Mike via text 874-9390. As I was watching Biden's speech last night, he was talking about kids and basketball and kind of inner city stuff. And I got to check myself sometimes, like, maybe I'm just creating something that's not there. But Mike says, hey, you got to pull the part about Joe Biden talking about black kids in basketball. We might get into that coming up about 5 minutes from now.
Down in the east side, called the Bucket, highest crime rate in the country. There's a place where I was the only white guy that worked as a lifeguard down in that area, on the east side. And you know you can always tell where the best basketball in the state is and the best basketball in the city is. It's where everybody shows up.
So I heard, and I want to thank listener Mike for. So I heard this in the Biden speech last night, and I have to check myself. You know who the hardest person in the world is to be honest with?
Yourself.
Yeah. And I'm hearing that last night as I'm watching the speech, and I'm like, okay, maybe that's just me, because sometimes we look for it. We look for that in, we look for the racism, we look for whatever chance we get to not criticize, but to call out facts. I want to thank Columbia Public School District for teaching me the phrase, facts are not attacks. So I'm always looking for that opportunity. Now, wait a minute. Here's the problem. Here's the fact of this. So I heard that, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to include that because maybe that's too much of a stretch. But you hear, and let me play it again to give you an idea if you listen to it.
Down in the east side, called the Bucket, highest crime rate in the country. There's a place where I was the only white guy that worked as a lifeguard down in that area, on the east side. And you know you can always tell where the best basketball in the state is and the best basketball in the city is. It's where everybody shows up.
Is that like am I looking too much there? Because I wasn't going to use it. And listener Mike texted us 874-9390, area code 573-874-9390. That's how you get in touch with Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Your opinion is it?
The way I like to judge it is if maybe somebody from our side would have said something like that.
Boom.
And if they would have freaked out, which I think they would have.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But for them, it's okay. And again, we go back to the buzzword of the day.
Hypocrisy.
Hannah, producer Hannah, does it strike you? You hear that and like, kind of stereotyping in a negative way? No.
Yeah, borderline.
Nah. It does sound that way, or?
It does sound that way, borderline, yeah, but it's not glaring.
Now, what if Trump said it? Oh, yeah, then it's totally...
Yeah, the left would have been up in arms.
This is Wake Up. Let's move on from Joe, man. We could sit here all day, but Marsh has that look on his face like, okay, I know. Corn pop! And the little kids would sit on my legs and rub my legs.
Oh, gosh.
But Marcia's looking at me like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. Let's talk about something else. Stephanie Bell, who's in the midst of taking a selfie, is here this morning.
Oh, come on.
And by the way, if you're... Look at that feed on the YouTube channel. That's spectacular.
Thank you.
You do. You seriously. You look great.
Thanks.
And I don't mean to sound...
Creepy?
Hannah, I know Hannah's looking at me like, don't be a creepy old white guy, Branden.
And you did not take my advice.
Which was?
Don't be a creepy old white guy, Branden.
Saying you look great, that's not, I don't think that's creepy.
I do have a full face of makeup because I'm doing a lot of lawyering this week, so I don't always get my full face of makeup on by 5 in the morning.
I don't know if you're aware of this, Branden. Stephanie Bell, kind of a boss.
Yep. She is.
It's a busy week.
She is. Busy week. We're grateful that you can be with us here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Mr. Marsh is hanging out with us. How you doing today, man? Excellent, and thank you for asking.
I just watched Marsh snap a selfie, too.
You know what I think would be fun one day is to get, and by the way, how come Columbia Mayor Barbara Buffalo doesn't do, she should do more selfies.
She really should.
And I like Mayor Barbara Buffalo. When it comes to politics, we agree on very little, but it doesn't mean we don't get along. But I think
she's fun.
She is.
She is
fun. She's fun. Maybe she could take more selfies like the mayor of Jefferson City and like our own Stephanie Bell. Producer Hannah is here.
Howdy.
My name is Branden Rathert. If there is something that we can do for you, 573-874-9390, 874-9390. And Steph, since you weren't here yesterday, one of the things we want to cover, I don't know if back in the day, there's a dude recently, I think it was he was from Moberly, arrested in Columbia for exposure, and we got to wondering, well, what about like back in the day? It used to be, and I don't know if this is a thing with the kids anymore because I'm not that creepy old guy. I don't hang out with kids. And when I say kids, I usually mean anybody younger than 40 is kind of in my mind. I say kids, and I don't mean that I think you're a kid. It's just what I say. But it used to be back in our day, like mooning was a thing. Do you know what mooning was?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And I'm wondering, could you get arrested for that? As a matter of fact, we had a guy text the show at 874-9390 and said one time he was at the lake and I can't remember the name of the boat, John.
The Larry Don.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I used to go down on that dock. They sold those big suckers that were like colorful, those huge like theme park suckers. And you could put your quarter in the machine, get the little fish food, throw it over the dock right there where the Larry Don docked. And they had a weird like trolley. John, do you remember this? You could ride down the hill near there.
So this guy texted us yesterday at 874-9390 and says one time we mooned that boat.
Yep.
And then the Water Patrol on the Lake of the Ozarks didn't have a sense of humor that day.
Well, that was after the wakes from the big boat flooded their engine, wasn't it?
Karma's a real thing sometimes.
My kids think mooning is hilarious. It's still a thing.
So, Steph, I was trying to tell Brandon this yesterday. I was like, this definitely is a dude thing, and I'm going to add little kids to the list. I think little kids and dudes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do with that correlation what you will.
So after the show yesterday, we got an email from a listener by the name of Chris. This was actually email, brathert@mailzimmer.com. He says, man, you guys were talking about this at the end of the show yesterday, and I don't know if this was from an old movie or what it was, but he said he got to giggling listening to us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri and sent us this.
We have pictures of you so-called mooners, and just because the pictures aren't of your faces doesn't mean we can't identify you. At this very moment, those pictures are on the way to Washington, where the FBI has experts in this type of identification. If you turn yourselves in now, you may escape a federal charge.
Which is interesting. Besides the mooning aspect, the FBI is mentioned in there. And they're obviously under a lot of fire right now. Yesterday, I don't know if you heard this, but somebody as it relates to the Hunter Biden case. Apparently an FBI agent. I can't remember if he was fired or resigned, but I just thought it was interesting. Could you be arrested? Because, and listen, I'm not a lawyer. I usually defer to my friend Stephanie Bell, who's not a criminal defense attorney, unless I ever get in trouble. You know the first phone call I'm making? Mark Ellinger and Stephanie Bell. Hey, I know you ain't a criminal defense attorney, but
maybe you should call Jennifer Bukowski. That's kind of her area. But so there's a big difference between could you be arrested and should you be arrested. And with the way that we are failing to prosecute actual crimes, I would say regardless of whether you could be arrested, you shouldn't be arrested for mooning. Plus, it's funny.
Yeah, it's just funny. Tom, thanks for the text. 874-9390. Tom says the Mooners scene we just played is from the movie Grease. He says it was after they mooned the camera during the dance contest.
And if my kids are listening, mooning isn't really funny. Don't do it.
We said, yeah, not in school. And we all said as we're giggling, talking about it, don't do that. Don't do that. And I don't want to switch gears here, but it's got me to thinking about what you just said. Should you arrest somebody for something like that?
Yeah.
And what I'm wondering is, with marijuana very likely to be legalized by our vote in November, recreational weed, I'm wondering now, because law enforcement agencies all across mid-Missouri, whether we're talking Callaway County, Columbia City, Cole County, this is something they're going to have to face. And I don't know if it's a simple thing, but I'm wondering, is there already a lot of leeway? Let's say somebody gets pulled over and they got a little bit of scratch in the car. By the way, for those not familiar, and I do not smoke marijuana, nor do I ingest any type of marijuana. But back in the day, scratch was just, it was the stuff that rubbed off your bud. If you had a bud of weed, you'd have, like leftovers, shake, stuff in the bag. You know what I'm talking about, right, John?
Zero.
But I'm wondering, like, is that one of those things nowadays? Let's say you're cruising through Montauk County, you get pulled over, and there's a little bit of shake in there. Does law enforcement as a whole, they're like, I'm not going to bust your chops over this?
Yeah, no, there's been some stuff about funding and other things that have led to decreased enforcement of lower level marijuana crimes for a while.
All right, now already it's not even 7 o'clock. We got to do a fact check. Chris says the clip move that we just played was actually from Porky's, not the movie Grease. Y'all can hash it out. Coming up, if you're a veteran and you might be in need of some legal help, we've got some help for you. We're going to do that coming up about 5 minutes.
We have pictures of you so-called mooners. And just because the pictures aren't of your faces doesn't mean we can't identify you.
All right, so hottest topic this morning besides Biden's hypocrisy on full-blown, utter display last night in Pennsylvania talk. He says, I don't know if you've heard his profound idea that he said last night. He wants to fund the police. This, the whole party, that whole Democrat party, defund the police last night to raucous cheers. We need to fund the police. What a great concept. Other big topic, mooning. We got talking about mooning. Could you be arrested for mooning? Dude arrested in I think it was from Moberly, but arrested for exposure. And we don't know. Can you be arrested for mooning? Do your buttocks? Does that count as genitalia? So that clip of the movie, somebody says it's from the movie Grease, and then somebody says it was from the movie Porky's, which is one of those classic early 80s. Even back in the day when the movie was hot, Porky's was okay. You went to see it because everybody else was seeing it. Do we have a definitive answer on the fact check, Hannah?
Well, I've only seen one text saying it was from Porky's, and we got a whole bunch for Grease. I have seen the movie Grease, and I am 98% sure that clip is from Grease.
All right, so there we have it. Hannah's decided.
Well, Bill also called in, and he said in Porky's, they identified the culprit, quote, by their tallywhacker.
Okay, let's move forward. We have,
according to listener Bill.
According to our sources, we have, this is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. We have much love for our veterans. I was excited to hear about. There's a Veterans Appreciation Night. Want to bring in Dale Roberts. Dale, tell us about this and the organization that's putting this on.
The Veterans Law Project is a program within Mid-Missouri Legal Services, actually funded by the Boone County Bar Association, where we provide free legal service to veterans. We don't handle criminal case. We don't do criminal defense. Legal services, eviction, bankruptcy, help with a creditor, divorce, all sorts of things. Civil matters, yes.
This is good to know about, man, because that can be a dicey canal to try to walk through and navigate that system when you're seeking legal help. As a matter of fact, Dale, you guys have a big event coming up.
Tomorrow from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the American Legion Post in Columbia, we're having what we call a Veterans Appreciation Night and Benefits Expo.
Is this something like any of us can go to, or what's going on here?
Certainly the public is welcome. The event is aimed towards our veterans, student veterans here in town, as well as all the other veterans, and also active duty, members of the reserves and the Guard. It's an event where we will have about 18 or 20 different providers, folks who provide services to veterans will be there. Each one of them will have a table, sort of like a fair, and they'll be there to explain what opportunities they can offer to a veteran, such as, help finding a job or a home, things like that.
Great event, great cause. I love that you guys are doing this. I'm one of those, I personally feel we can't do too much for our veterans. There's always something that we can find a way. That event is tomorrow, 3 to 7, American Legion Post. Website or a phone number if somebody wants to get more information on your project.
American Legion Post Columbia, Missouri Facebook page. Actually, I believe it is going to be posted at mmls.org for Mid-Missouri Legal Services, mmls.org. I'll give my phone number. They can call me at 573-355-3513.
355-3513. Dale Roberts will get you all hooked up, man. Thanks for joining us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Great work. And if you need any more contact info, you can let us know. Great conversation with Dale Roberts that we had yesterday. I'm glad that he's able to do that, and I'm glad that they're doing stuff for veterans because we think about, by the way, we have details on this, on the report, the sloppy pullout from Afghanistan last year and what that did. And most of us, we knew something like that was coming the day Joe Biden was elected, and we think about the real-life consequences of when Joe's elected president. We see what happened with the pullout in Afghanistan last year and our Americans and people that were serving our country that died, that were killed, and we knew this was coming because starting January the 20th of 2021, our view on the worldwide stage was immediately weakened. And there are several veterans, even here in Mid-Missouri, that we had spoke with. And after Afghanistan, it's amazing how these guys, number one, they rally. But oftentimes when something like that happens to their fellow brothers in arms, man, it really affects their psyche. And there were several conversations that we had last year with local veterans just devastated by this. Of course, one of the troops killed, this guy lived right down I-70 in Wentzville. And I think of his family and what they're doing today. Those are what his family is still going through today. Those are the consequences of Joe being elected president. Real life consequences. Coming up a little bit after 7 o'clock, there was a big rally yesterday in Jefferson City. It has to do with eminent domain, Grain Belt Express, potentially coming through mid-Missouri. We'll have that for you coming up at 7:10 here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Missouri driver's license, a Missouri non-driver's license, federal issued ID like a passport or a military ID, or something else that's issued by either the state of Missouri or the federal government with an expiration date on it.
That's Brianna Lennon. She is the Boone County Clerk, chatting with our news partners at ABC 17. Here's what you need to vote. NAACP, and I think even locally, they're saying, oh, this is clamping down on people's right to vote. They are wrong, inherently wrong. As a matter of fact, the Democrat clerk of Boone County, Brianna Lennon, saying you just need an ID. And I say that. So you need an ID to vote. You also need to register to vote. And then come November, you need to get out and vote. I'm still stunned at voter turnout, specifically in Boone County. And I get it, just primary earlier this month, but still stunned. We talked about all this excitement, especially over our Senate race. Maybe 1 out of every 5 voters turned out to vote. A little bit of higher turnout, I think, like in Howard County, Drain County. It was, as I recall, it was a little bit higher in some of our surrounding counties.
Yeah, and it was. And I remember you and I doing the live coverage that night, and we were talking about the projection, and it was one of those things that I think they were looking at 30 to 35%, both Mr. Ashcroft and also Brianna Lennon. Ended up being closer to 23 to depending on where you're at. That's 1 out of 4. That is disappointing. In a primary election that is a U.S. Senate and all those congressional races, 1 out of 4, that was low, and that's just registered. That doesn't include people who aren't registered. Mr. Ashcroft and Ms. Lennon both talked about that election. We talked about it. There was tons of. Now I think the general will get higher, but we've been higher in previous August elections for sure, and the weather was fine that day.
And I get it, it's primary, but as much as we were all talking about that U.S. Senate race, because there was a lot of talk no matter where you went. There sure were a lot of us talking about it, and I thought that would show up at the polls. Didn't see it.
No.
But I talk about the importance of that because this is the guy and this is the party running the country.
So the answer is not defund the police, it's fund the police.
Wait a minute.
Hold up.
Fund the police. I thought that was the exact. You could not get more opposite of that party's mindset, the Democrat Party. Defund the police, defund the police. We've seen in cities where they've tried it, namely places like Seattle and Chicago. It did not work. San Francisco, the Mayor London Breed. We've highlighted her audio more than once where she came out and made bold statements. Therefore, they didn't use the word defund. I think they used one of those fancy words like, we're going to reimagine where we put our public safety money. We're going to reimagine. And then we highlighted the audio from her about 1 year later saying, because of incidents. It wasn't because of crime in San Francisco. It was because of incidents on the streets. We are going to reimagine how we spend money on public safety. As part of Biden's speech last night in Pennsylvania, besides several mistakes already, he was talking about the speed of bullets and stuff like that. It was just really an angry speech, like a halftime locker room speech. He was just angry, and I think trying to rile up folks. And great, you're in your echo chamber there when you're at a rally, and you're telling your folks, and don't confuse the party, when you're telling your folks to, hey, vote John Fetterman for governor of Pennsylvania, which he did, by the way. John Fetterman is not running for governor of Pennsylvania. He's running for Senate. But I think his producer Hannah highlighted, and this is it was all about criticizing, really, Republicans, criticizing smart people. That was the gist of his speech, criticizing all the smart people. All. Remember, this is the unity guy. That's what he spent most of his speech doing. And then I love this.
Where the hell are we? Where the hell are we?
It could mean so many things.
So, Marsh, the context of when he was saying, where the hell are we? You know the context, really, of what he was saying. Yeah. I like producer Hannah's take on it, though.
My theory is that he forgot where he was, and he was asking his staff, wait, where are we?
I take it, and I take it, too. It's the more literal meaning.
Where the hell are we?
Like he's in the middle of this speech talking about basketball and talking about how the smart people are idiots. And, hey, here's a great idea. Let's give law enforcement more money. And he stops and turns around.
Where the hell are we?
Where am I?
You're the leader. You're supposed to know where we are. You're supposed to talk about where we currently are and where we're headed, and not just say, hey, where are we, guys? Tell me where we are at.
What happened? Where am I? And so that's why I highlight, getting out and voting. Brianna Lennon, Boone County Clerk, when she was chatting with ABC 17. Yeah, you need ID. It's really not that difficult, but now we need to do it. It was at the Columbia Pachyderms Friday, and one of the things that we discussed was messaging, and right now is a golden opportunity with the number of regretful biters, not only that we have nationwide, but the new listeners to Wake Up Mid-Missouri with Stephanie Bell, Brian Hausworth, producer Hannah, John Marsh, and myself. Or me, whatever the good English is supposed to be there. Now's a golden opportunity because we hear all the time an influx of younger listeners to Wake Up Mid-Missouri on 104.5 News Radio, KWOS, and 93.9 The Eagle. We get it. And so let's message. Let's tell those independents and conservatives. Ben Shapiro hosts the Ben Shapiro Show weeknight, 7 o'clock on 93.9 The Eagle, a nighttime slot on KWS, Mark Levin. But he tweeted, basically, and I don't know exactly what his tweet was, but Ben Shapiro was saying, hey, listen, we got to quit hanging our hat on Trump. I get it. We love Trump. We're passionate about Trump. We are. But when it talks, and I like what he said because it agrees with what I have been thinking for a long time. And Stephanie will get my back on this. I'm like, listen, we've got us. In the echo chamber, we have got us. But you look at all the regretful Biden voters, regretful Democrats right now, and this is an opportunity to get those people to vote intelligently for conservatives. And I'll tell you, the Columbia Pachyderm Club, they're doing some cool things. Mizzou College Republicans, who was actually on the show Monday, they're promoting, they put out a newsletter all the time. The Columbia Pachyderms do. They put out a weekly newsletter. As a matter of fact, Friday's speaker is Don Weaver. He is a local attorney, former police officer. He's talking about SAPA, Missouri's Second Amendment Preservation Act. So he's speaking this Friday. But one of the things they mentioned, too, is, hey, by the way, Mizzou College Republicans, they're doing some stuff. Here's when they're meeting. And if you would like to support the college, the Mizzou College Republicans, you can get out and do that. And that's the kind of thing, get out and talking to these younger people. Again, Mizzou College Republicans, we've already got them, but how can they then message and how can we message?
Yeah, you bring up a great point, Brandon. And for people that, and I know we do have some Democrats that listen to us as well, I just want to give you a couple of quick numbers here and highlight to your point about it's great to get registered, but you got to get out to vote, regardless of who you decide to vote. But if you look at Boone County's projection, Brianna Lennon projected about a 30 to 35%. She dropped that down a little bit the Saturday before when she realized the absentee numbers weren't coming in. Jay Ashcroft dropped his numbers down a little bit too. Boone County has 126,000 registered voters. 29,539, so ballpark 30,000 cast ballots. Of those, that's by the way, 23.49%. I was a little surprised that it was a little closer in terms of breakdown of parties. Democratic Party voters, 15,758. Republican Party primary, 13,621. So still more Democrats than Republicans voting, very few Libertarians, and a handful of Constitution Party folks voted. But that is not even 24%. That is very, very disappointing for an election that had, and for Democrats, Trudy Bush Valentine, that was a heated race. Democrats, and their turnout was bigger in the two cities. They had some interest here as well, but I was expecting much bigger than that turnout. Yeah. I really was.
I was too. From your journalistic point of view, Marsh, were you kind of, and I'm not trying to bring your opinion into this, but just from what you know and having been around here for 30 years, were you expecting a bigger turnout? Really? How come? And I wish that there was a way we could say to, it's one thing to register to vote. It is another thing to go out and actually do it on that day. And I hope I'm not. That my intent is not to be preachy at all. I'm just like, what can we do? I know the NBA is talking about not having any games on election days to encourage voter turnout. We get what's happening there. Kellyanne Conway, in response to Ben Shapiro saying, listen, we got to quit hanging our hat on Trump. On him as a person, I think maybe is what he was trying to say. We love the ideas. Maybe we're seeing those carried out by people like Ron DeSantis, Kristi Noem, maybe carrying on that torch. Kellyanne Conway on Fox yesterday, of course, worked for Trump.
Those who want to move on from Trump, you go first. People are so obsessed with him, they don't spend a minute learning what the 74 million Trump-Pence voters want.
Which is great, right? We don't spend a minute learning what those 74 million Trump-Pence voters want. The problem is if we're based on last election, we need 79 million people to vote the right way. Coming up here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri on 93.9 The Eagle, we're going to talk some more state politics. Scott Faughn, Missouri Times, he is going to be joining us. We're going to be highlighting I don't know if you're familiar with Scott Faughn. He's a guy, when it comes to Missouri politics, I think of people like Christopher Arps, who was on the show yesterday. I think of people like Scott Faughn, like they know Missouri politics. One of the things we're going to be talking about is the idea of changing Missouri's constitution.
The idea we're going to be voting on that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there is that.
Come on.
Speaking of voter turnout, and we're going to play his favorite song. You know what Scott Faughn's favorite song is?
Integrity. It's time to listen, make no mistake.
He should really upgrade his music taste.
Trudy Bush Valentine. I like it. When we get a giggle out of our news directors like Brian Hausworth and John Marsh, we know that we've done something right. So Scott Faughn, he is joining us at 8:10, and there's a big event, and I love this. Again, we're talking about getting younger people. They're doing a big event called 30 Under 30, and that's where they celebrate. They used to celebrate people like Stephanie Bell, but
come on.
Wow. Shots have been fired inside the studio.
I did ask if I could be nominated at 29, but they said they would fact check that.
You roast the ones you love. And there is a roast for a local state lawmaker on the same night. They're doing the 30 Under 30.
I'm not looking forward to that one because I know it's only going to amplify all of your whining about how you want a roast for your birthday.
I do. I've been dropping, not humble brags, but kind of that hint. Like
you haven't been dropping anything.
It's
You've
true.
been throwing it at us. Speaking of dropped, there's something all over the highway in Memphis that caused quite an issue.
Good morning, 7:25-ish, which means it's...
Holy cow, it's 7:26.
Progress.
Ooh.
A little bit of progress, man. Time for What's Hot with Hannah. Here I make progress. I'm getting closer to the time. 7:25-ish is when we're supposed to do What's Hot with Hannah.
It's like, do you want a gold star for doing what you're supposed to be doing?
Exactly. And then get closer to being on time and then forget to introduce what it is we're doing, which is What's Hot with Hannah.
You know, Stephanie actually sent me this one this morning, so shout out to Steph.
It was too good not to share.
We're going to Memphis, Tennessee, which is one of my favorite cities, by the way. And a portion of the northbound Interstate 55 was closed yesterday because there was a semi-truck that had a little bit of an incident, and they were hauling jars of Alfredo sauce. And somehow, all of the jars of Alfredo sauce ended up on I-55.
All of them.
All of them.
It looks like a snow-covered road. I mean, that's a lot of Alfredo.
This isn't like aisle 7 at Mosier's and somebody tipped over a couple of jars of Alfredo sauce. This highway 55 is covered in white for a massive stretch.
Right, and it's probably the glass jars, and so not only did they have to clean up Alfredo sauce, they had to clean up a bunch of glass on an interstate, which could be problematic. And it happened just before 5 o'clock rush hour to make matters worse.
Even better.
I love truckers, but to this day, one of the funniest things is like when weird stuff spills on the highway. Animals. It's been like peanut butter. There's like been some pretty weird spills.
Locally in Tipton, a year or so ago, there was a big grain truck that flipped over and there was grain all over the highway that caused a backup for several hours.
Last year it was east of Mexico. I was going up to Hannibal to see my mom. As a matter of fact, it was during that Cardinals 20-plus game win streak last year, and there was a grain truck tipped over right by school, and that is net because it goes everywhere. And if it gets deep enough, man, if you try driving through grain, number one, don't do that. You'll upset some people. Number two, you can almost get stuck in that.
I heard that first responders were like knee-deep in grain trying to help out with this traffic crash. It was not good.
Coming up here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Glad you could be here, by the way. Just let us thank you real quick. We do appreciate you being here on the show. Some of the things coming up here in a little bit. Protest in Jefferson City yesterday. And I love this because unlike we saw, like even in Columbia earlier this summer, people protesting a Supreme Court decision. Your Honor, I still don't understand that. I get you want to get together and be mad when things don't go your way, but to protest is
the court kicked it back to the state legislature, so maybe they're trying to put the pressure on them. I don't know.
Protest that's got some meat to it. We're going to cover that. And this happened in Jefferson City. We're doing that 5 minutes from now here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
И что эта скульптура установлена именно в Фултоне.
In Fulton.
Свыше 40 лет
More than 46 years ago,
Уинстон Черчилль выступил здесь со своей знаменитой речью,
in Fulton,
воспринятой
and in
в
my
моей
country,
стране
this speech was singled out
как
as
формальная.
the
All right, is that by the way, Mikhail Gorbachev, one of the key players as it comes to worldwide politics, and one of the reasons we're sitting where we are today here in the United States of America. Cannot stress enough. And if you're younger, let's say like a Stephanie Bell or producer or Hannah, it may not mean as much to you, but this was important. I hate to pull the old guy card here, Marsh, but we cannot stress how important Mikhail Gorbachev was to worldwide politics. And not only the importance, Cold War era and all that, but he spoke in Fulton, Missouri in 1992, and you were there, man. And if you think about where we are today, because we talk about the influx of younger listeners to wake up mid-Missouri on 93.9 The Eagle and 104.5 News Radio, KWOS, and a lot of folks, there's not, okay, some old guy from world history is dead, but it really, really is important. The other thing, did you notice, maybe it's just me, but Hausworth pointed this out earlier, and I'm like, oh, yeah. He's getting a lot of credit in the national news outlets upon his death that how important he was with the Cold War coming to an end. Well, let's not, and I'm going to put on my, if you'll hand me my aluminum hat here, I'm going to put on
I'll go get it out of your desk.
I want to put on my tinfoil hat here for a minute. But they're failing, it seems like, on a national level to give Reagan, and I get it, Gorbachev, he died. But as we talk about his time here in mid-Missouri, in Fulton, these national news outlets, Gorbachev and Cold War, and they're not giving as much love to Reagan. And maybe it's just me. Thank you, Hannah. But I think it's almost this. I'm stretching a little bit. I'm going to be honest with you as a friend.
Don't pull any muscles.
I'm stretching. But a lot of these national news outlets, again, because of Trump, it all goes back to Trump. How much distaste, they still have that bitter taste in their mouth. Like they've brushed, like when you eat onions and you brush your teeth 4 or 5 times and you still can't get that taste out of your mouth. That's what the national news outlets, they're like. They've eaten an onion that was Trump and they can't get that taste out of their mouth. But they won't mention Reagan, I think, because he's a Republican. Am I stretching? Maybe.
A little bit.
Okay, here's my tinfoil hat back, Hannah. Thank you. Yesterday, Jefferson City, and this has been, at least in the last 7 years, this has been a thing. Grain Belt Express. Marsh, kind of bottom line, basically Grain Belt Express, and if I'm simplifying it too much, fill in the holes, John, but a power line from Kansas over to Indiana, going to take power. They want to take people's land. I shouldn't say take. They'll take it they'll give you up to 150% value of your land as dictated by law. Eminent domain. Am I missing anything there? Is that a pretty good bottom line? As a matter of fact, Roger Fisher, Callaway County Commissioner, was on the show a couple of weeks ago, and although ultimately we were talking about a different topic, solar farms, we were talking about, to an extent, some of the same things, eminent domain. And so yesterday in Jefferson City, and I appreciate what these folks are doing. They're saying, hey, listen, this is BS. We need to catch the attention of some folks. Hopefully these very same people go back next week when we start our special session, when there's a whole lot of people around the Capitol. Right now, kind of quiet as we head into the Labor Day weekend. Next week, it's going to be a special session. As a matter of fact, Holly Rader, she reps Southeast Missouri. Squirrel. But if I don't mention it now, I'll forget.
We only take right-hand turns on this show.
Right-hand turn. Holly Rader, state senator, longtime state rep, Southeast Missouri. She's been very open about her, not personally, but her family, the family element of addiction and how it's affected her family over the years and how she'd grown up in just horrible circumstances. She has a book now. She's going to be joining us next week to talk about that. But that reminded me, special session, so she's going to be in the studio next week here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. But I appreciate these folks. They're out there doing something, unlike we saw in Columbia a couple of months ago following the Dobbs decision by the Supreme Court of the United States. All these, we're protesting the Supreme Court. What the hell are you protesting? That's not a protest. You might think you're bringing issue. Okay, you want to shout at local lawmakers because Supreme Court did not outlaw abortion. They said, listen, states are going to decide. Anyhow, I just thought it was silly. But these folks yesterday in Jefferson City, Patrick Whitty was chatting with KOMU Channel 8. He's a senior vice president for Invenergy, I should say. Says this is important even for Missouri.
That footprint will take up a less than 1% of the overall acreage in easement. Land can continue to be farmed, can be grazed, used as it is today. Grainbelt Express enables the ability to tap into some of the lowest cost energy sources in the entire United States of America.
So he's senior vice president with Invenergy. He's saying what he's supposed to say. I'm going to guess, and I don't know. I haven't done my research on the guy. I'm going to guess he is not from Missouri. I don't know. Maybe he comes from a farming background. And I get it, being the mouthpiece for for a company like that. Oh, this is going to be good for Missourians. And I don't know how much benefit ultimately we're going to get from that on the power. Yeah, because it's supposed to it's taking power from Kansas, really taking it to Indiana and to be distributed there. And I'm with you. I don't know that we've ever really gotten any clear answers. And he did say there's some opportunities, but he didn't say opportunities for Missourians to get cheaper power. He says there's the opportunity for cheaper energy, but not necessarily for Missourians. But again, we get it. He's a spokesperson for the company. Marilyn Smith. I love the passion in her voice. I've never farmed. My maternal grandparents, they were farmers in Perry County, Missouri. And
we could have guessed that you never farmed. Just throwing that out there.
Are you stereotyping?
A little bit.
Yeah. I never farmed, but I used to spend a lot of time playing on my grandmother and grandfather's tractors and fishing in the pond and watching them. Here's the one thing I always knew about them. They were always, forever, nonstop working. Once in a while, my grandpa Engert, he would come in and he'd goof around with me. We'd do some art. He'd take my hand and do the turkey print thing, around the fingers. It's one of my few memories I have of my grandpa Engert in Perry County, Missouri, because he was a farmer and he was always working. But Marilyn Smith, I think really captures the heart and essence of what a lot of these people are saying.
There's not enough money for them to give us to allow them to go through our land. We don't want them to go through our land. That's going to take some of our land out of production for the rest of our lives.
It's like Roger Fisher was saying last week. He talked about these families. This is land that's generation to generation to generation, and they don't want to give it up. But some people, they're willing to take whatever the price is up to 150%. And I'm trying to think of material possessions. I'm not talking like spiritual possessions or relationships. I'm trying to think, and right now I think...
Thank God you're not talking about relationships.
What am I willing to take and pay for this relationship? But I think my car, for example, my car, by the way, is almost as old as Hannah, producer Hannah is. It's 16 years old. The math is right. Would I take 150%? And I'm not comparing my car to heritage land, to heritage farmers. I'm not comparing it. But one of the things I own, my car. Would I take 150% for my car? Part of me wants to say yes, but right now I'd say no, because right now with the car market being the way it is, the value of my car, believe it or not, or at least according to Kelley Blue Book, I can get more for my car now than I could 2 to 3 years ago, and a couple $1,000s more for a 16-year-old car. The problem is I can't buy anything because something that I would have to buy to replace it. the cost of that has gone up in astronomical terms.
You still looking at that Ford Bronco?
Oh, I'm looking all right. I'm looking. A couple of years ago, 2 years ago, and I took pictures because I was taking pictures of MSRPs on windows at some local dealerships. Jeep Grand Cherokee. I wanted to get back in the Jeep line. I was in the Jeep line for the better part of my life, and then got into the GM line for a while. And took some pictures of Jeep Grand Cherokee. Took pictures and saved them for a while. Man, it takes me, you know how non-committal I am?
Yes, I do.
It's the same thing whenever I buy something, when I buy a car. It'll take me years to buy a car because I have commitment issues, John. That's right.
Well, and the longer you take to figure out what you want, the more options there are being released all the time. So it's kind of a crapshoot.
I'm broadening my horizons. So anyhow, I took a picture of these Jeep Grand Cherokees. Love the Jeep line, and this was 3 years ago, I want to say. And I look at them now, and it's just like there's no way.
Ugh.
But if you're somewhere illegally and someone uses what you believe is imminent deadly force on you, you can use deadly force in return. Other states have a duty to retrieve. Missouri just did away with that.
Bill Tackett talking to our news buds at ABC 17 regarding the Stand Your Ground law. This on the heels of the guy being shot and killed in Fayette. Apparently, the guy who is accused of doing the shooting in court yesterday saying it was self-defense. It's interesting because not every, as Mr. Tackett said, there's different laws that have different applications in varying states. Be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm trying to do the math here. We got a great question here at Wake Up Mid-Missouri. So I'm doing some rough math.
Yeah, I bet you are.
Rathert, any math you do is rough. But great question via text. And you can get in touch with us anytime you want. 874-9390, call or text. But we were talking about voter turnout in the primaries. I was shocked that it was so low. Now, any other August primary, I would not have been surprised as much as everybody was talking about that U.S. Senate primary here in Missouri. It seems like there was a lot of talking and not a lot of people actually showing up at the polls. That's my take. But great question from one of our listeners, and she wants to know, for example, in Boone County. This is from Susan, 874-9390. So what percentage of eligible citizens actually register to vote? So in Boone County, population of roughly 180,000. Roughly 100, according to the latest U.S. Census Bureau figures, roughly 184,000 people, 18 plus. So 145,000 people. And I don't know offhand how many. I have reached out.
Off to a great start.
I know. Well, usually I have this stuff, but there are so many things going on right now. We are working on that math for you. As a matter of fact, I reached out to Brianna Lennon, Boone County Clerk, see if she knows offhand how many registered voters there are in Boone County. We'll compare that with the numbers. The other thing that's going on, some response to this protest yesterday. Farmers, local farmers, and even non-farmers showing up in Jefferson City is Grain Belt Express. Is where they're going to be. This big power line's going to come through Missouri, I think, like from Kansas, somewhere even further, even more Midwestern than what we are. It's going to go to Indiana. A lot of folks are not happy about it, and this has to do with eminent domain issues. Text worked in eminent domain for a while. A private company, this Invenergy private company, should never have that right to be able to buy land that people don't want to sell. And here's the other thing. Well, if those people want to sell it, if they want to. Well, then the neighbors get upset. Well, I don't want, for example, we talk about the solar farms. I don't know if you've seen the solar farms going in Callaway County and how that's got a lot of folks upset. But then there's a lot of folks making money off of it. Say, yeah, I'll sell my land at 150% or whatever it is you're going to offer me. Yeah, I'll sell it. Well, then the neighbor gets upset. So, well, I don't want to wake up and be looking at solar panels all day. And I don't have the answer. And I liken it to, again, I'll go to my car, which is nowhere near or has the same value as somebody's farmland that's been passed down from generation to generation. My car's it's been passed down from one owner to the next, and I'm the next owner. I would not sell my car because, number one, I like it. Number two, I wouldn't want to have to buy another car right now, car market being the way it is. And I like my car. I've had it for almost half the lifespan of the vehicle, and I like it.
Well, and Bill reminds us off the text. He says, fake news, Brandon. In Missouri, you don't own your car. You just rent it from the government.
Man, I think the only person that gets angrier than me about that is Gary Nolan. Gary Nolan's here on the radio station 9 o'clock. So I was for the most part I was born in Missouri, mostly raised in Missouri after being an Air Force brat and moving around as a little kid to Arizona and Beale Air Force Base, California. Mostly grew up here and then left for a lot of years, Florida and Idaho. And I remember 7 years ago going to the Boone County government offices because they sent me after I bought a car, they sent me a bill saying, hey, you owe us taxes. And I was kind of new in town, So I politely go down to the government offices and take the green piece of paper and, hey, my name's Branden. I'm new in town. Y'all made a mistake. See, I paid the taxes when I bought the car, so here you go. Have a good day. And they're like, hold up, Mr. Rathert. And I say, you owe property taxes on that car. And I was dumbfounded. Wait a minute. Because I own the car, you want me to pay you money? Yeah. And they intelligently surmised, oh, you haven't lived here for a while. How about that? The idea of changing the Missouri state constitution, we are voting on that in November. Scott Faughn, Missouri Times. More insight coming up for you at 8:10 on Wake Up, Mid-Missouri.
Integrity. It's time to listen, make no mistake. She'll listen to the people of the show me state. It's the right time, she's the right choice with a caring heart. She's a brand new voice, an inspiration for all to see.
Sorry.
Show me Missouri, show me truly.
Scott Faughn, who knows Missouri politics. He is with the Missouri Times. He's the guy that lives in the Eagles Nest there in the Capitol building in Jefferson City. He's got a bunk bed up there. Most nights he manages to stay in it without rolling out of it, but he knows Missouri politics. We were playing this campaign anthem, Trudy Bush Valentine, which is it's just obnoxious.
It's terrible.
It's horrible. But I thought, Scott, what was even more interesting was what she said in her tweet. She's like, I don't know if this is the hit song of the summer yet.
You got me, Brandon. I had made a promise to the Lord I was never going to have to hear that song again. I can kind of tell on the radio. This is where I heard it here on the station the first time. I can tell when you're going to segue into it, and I just turn the radio off real quick. But you got me here this morning, and it bores into your skull, and you just can't unhear it.
It's almost as bad as the Baby Shark song.
And I'd rather hear Baby Shark, and that's saying something.
Oh, that's bold.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I listen to that song, and it makes it easier for me to eat my oatmeal in the morning. I don't know what it is about that song.
I mean, I think it's going to make people easier to push that Eric Schmidt Chad through, all the way through the valley.
Welcome to the show. So we're going to hang out with Scott Faughn, Missouri Times. A couple of big things. We keep talking about voter turnout. A couple of big things that are coming up on the ballot. We're going to chat with Scott Faughn, Missouri Times. Check out his website, MissouriTimes.com. Mr. Brian Hausworth is here.
Brandon, thanks so much. Scott, I really appreciate you coming in and joining us in studio, you and I. When I had a chance to work at the Capitol, really, I always enjoyed not only your newspaper's coverage, but those talk shows where you'd bring in the lawmakers on both sides. Just very, very well done. And kudos to you for landing guests on both sides of the aisle.
Brian, I think, when you think of news on the radio, which I go back to Paul Harvey, the Zimmer station in Southeast Missouri, all over the place. When I used to think of news and during the break, Bob Priddy was that voice.
Yes.
And I think you have worked and earned the fact, I think when people of the next generation, that when they think of a news break, they think of Brian Hawksworth. And I think it's a heck of a legacy that you've came in, and it's a different platform and venue, but I think you've really replaced that, and what an important role that is.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the kind words. I really, that's very kind of you.
Hold on to some of that, because John Marsh is here too,
who's got a deeper voice. I always think I'm a man that I would do a radio show, and John Marsh's voice would be on there. And look, I'm a wuss. I can't. I'm like Bud Light, and he's Budweiser.
Yeah. Producer Hannah is here too.
What up?
My name is Branden Rathert. Something we can do for you, 573-874-9390. Missouri Times is doing something really cool too. I want to talk about that. But first I want to get to some of this stuff. And it's funny because when I hear national news outlets do this, it gets on my nerves. And Fox is probably one of the ones that does it the most. Probably only in my mind because that's who I'm watching the most. But to say, and how come nobody's talking about, why is nobody talking about this? Well, when you say that, you are talking about it. So I despise that phrase. But really, we're voting on the idea of potentially whether or not change the Missouri Constitution. Very likely not to happen. Maybe that's why nobody's talking about it, because nobody cares. But this is one of those, we can go and say, hey, do we want to change? And I'm glossing over it a little bit, the nuts and bolts. But it's interesting as we talk about voter turnout, even in primaries, we've been kind of talking, and I've got some numbers from Boone County as it relates to registered voters, eligible voters. Were you surprised by voter turnout in the primaries? And I get it's a primary, but as much as we, and when I say we, I'm including you and myself, as much as we talked about that U.S. Senate race, I didn't see it in Cole County, Callaway County, Montauk County, Boone County. Maybe 1 out of every 5 registered voters showed up. Were you surprised?
No.
Really?
And I'll tell you, part of it is the entire subject of politics. And a little bit, this is Trump. People want to blame Donald Trump personally. Donald Trump capitalized on some existing trends in our culture. But the fact of the matter is, when people think of politics now, they're almost like, ugh. It's just like it's a stressor. And I think the fact that, to a lot of people with social media, they get so over the top and vitriolic about it. Some folks are just like, you know what, just keep me out of it. And I think that's a trend that's going to continue.
To your point, and I'm the same way. I try to, Because I get this, and you might get it too, when people say, what do you do for a living? I say, I'm in marketing. And if they...
You're not wrong, technically.
Yeah.
You should say I'm a telemarketer, a used car, anything but in the media. Yeah.
So then I tell them, I say, well, I'm a talk show host. And here's what I get 9 times out of 10, Scott. They go, oh, you're a conservative talk show host? No, I'm a talk show host. Yeah, I have conservative leanings. That's not what it's about. This was one of our biggest topics on the show yesterday.
We have pictures of you so-called mooners. And just because...
We got to talking about mooning people. That's something we did back in the day when we were kids. I don't think people do it anymore. That was one of the biggest topics.
What did they call it yesterday? The vertical smile? Or what was it? That's what stuck with me. Yeah, John Marsh broke that out. That's what stuck with me yesterday.
That was hilarious.
All right, Scott Faughn, Missouri Times, joining us this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Branden, thank you so much. Scott, there is obviously the Farm Bureau came out yesterday and endorsed Eric Schmidt, so I'd love to get your take on that. But I also, I encourage people to take a look at Farm Bureau's tweet because they're getting kind of hammered on Twitter by progressive Twitter. But there's a Jess Piper, and you know the name Jess Piper. She's running for.
I like Jess Piper.
Yeah, and she's running for this Democratic House seat in far northwest Missouri. For people that don't follow her, I'll tell you, folks, she's got this huge following. She's going to speak at the Truman Days. Can she win in that district?
She's going to get smoked. But I tell you what, I love the fact if she's going to get smoked, she's going to do it with gusto.
And I will tell you this, feisty.
I'm so happy. I got to bring my son Gussie. He's 6 years old. Don't tell anybody at St. Peter's and in Jeff City, but Gussie's up. He has been a Farm Bureau member for all but one day of his life.
Wow.
So he's 6 years in. Farm Bureau is great. And I bet you of all the things Garrett Hawkins is worried about today, it's a liberal on Twitter giving him grief. It's probably not on the list, if I had to guess. No offense to liberals on Twitter, but Twitter is a very unique world of angry folks. It's majority left-leaning.
Yes, it
and
is.
if I had to guess, if there's one thing Garrett ain't got on his mind today, it's probably liberals on Twitter. But I'll tell you what, you want to break a little news?
Yep.
10 o'clock this morning, you have all the legislative leadership coming to the governor's office to try to hammer this tax cut out. You've got the Senator Probst's chair, I think the House budget chair. You'll have the House leadership, Representative Plocker, the Senate leadership. I think even Senator Hageman's coming down from Savannah. And I believe they're going to sit in the governor's office and try to come up to a number. Right now you got the Senate. The Senate's position is, you know what, when inflation goes up, our revenues have went up, but also that means expenses are going to go up. So let's cut taxes a conservative amount. Then we come back next year, if everything works out, we cut them again. The governor's position is, let's be a little more aggressive. And the House's position is, why don't we just cut all the taxes and end government? Like a very House position. So they're meeting today in the governor's office. Let me tell you, the governor has done so much work going to people, meeting with folks that have given him, Republicans that have attacked him. He has leadership. People think leadership is some big speech, right? That's not real. Leadership is going and kind of eating plates of crap, frankly, from folks that don't like you and you don't like them, and telling them and going to them and being like, I want to work with you. Let's work. That leadership is really the quiet conversation that you don't even want to have.
Reagan.
Wow. Yep. Yeah. And I tell you what, it's so funny to me. You know, you can imagine the governor's struggle. I mean, I sit and watch these folks. And most of the, everybody knows, most of the problems in our states, the suburb people complain all the time. But you've got like a Rob Vescovo, not a particularly serious person, the speaker. I mean, he's an Uber driver who's declared bankruptcy. So you can imagine how hard it would be for a successful farmer like Mike Parson to sit in a room and get told about economic development from a bankrupt Uber driver. I mean, to be honest with you, when I think about Rob Vescovo, last year I spent more money on spilt liquor in bars from Carthage to Crothersville than Rob Vescovo made. And that's just a fact.
Wow.
And to have to listen to someone like that tell you how to create jobs, Mike Parson is a leader with a lot of patience.
So let's reiterate. So first of all, let me wipe the sweat from my brow. That's a hot take there, man.
Both Republicans,
it says hot talk of mid-Missouri.
Wow.
Amen, brother. So there's a meeting today. You're telling us, Scott.
An hour and 40 minutes.
Hour and 40 minutes from now, so folks going to be getting together in the governor's office and trying to work out a deal prior to the special session, which gets underway Tuesday, following Labor Day weekend. Mm-hmm. All right. Scott Faughn, Missouri Times, joining us this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Nope. Be exactly the same.
All right.
I tell you, the thing about this IP process that I question.
IP process initiative petition.
Yeah.
I'm only saying that because we got an influx of younger listeners here on Wake Up Midmo.
I think if the people of this state want something, whether it's Medicaid expansion or whatever, they should have it. However, I do think it's wrong to put something on the ballot and not have to go to Southeast Missouri or North Missouri to get signatures, right? I mean, you can stand out in front of the schnooks in St. Louis and they'll all sign your stuff, right? But you go to an old boy in Dexter and get him to sign a petition from the government, give his address, he's going to have questions. He probably ain't going to do it. I think they should have to go to every congressional district right now and get signatures. Because the way the initiative petition process is today, you really just have to go to the cities and then you stop in Columbia, and that's it. I think you should have to go up to Scotland County, go up to Grant City and talk to Alan Andrews. Try to get him to sign that petition. Come down to Crothersville at one of them bars I spilled that liquor in and try to get those old boys to sign it. I think you'd have a better process and you'd have fewer things get on the ballot, but they'd be better and more thought out.
Incidentally, my time Southeast Missouri State University when we were the
Me too.
Indians.
I know, I'm still an Indian.
I spilt a lot of booze at the Double Nickel.
Nice.
You know that place. Scott Faughn, Missouri Times, saying this morning, 10 o'clock, there's a bunch of lawmakers getting together in Governor Parsons' office to try to come up with a number as it relates to tax cuts. Can you do this? I want to do the morning bell with Stephanie Bell, business news, a little twist that only Stephanie Bell can give you. But I think Jefferson City parking, if I stretch a little bit, Hannah, John, would that count as business news? Would that? Am I stretching?
I mean, it goes downhill when Stephanie Bell isn't here anyways, so.
All right, Scott Faughn, Missouri Times. Also, and there is a big event. 8:25, time for the Morning Bell Business News with that little twist that only Stephanie Bell can give you. The twist again today, Stephanie is not here for it, but I think that Scott Faughn, Missouri Times, and quickly want to cover parking in Jefferson City. That's business, right? You go to Jeff City when we're in Jeff City, want to do business, parking, paying. It's a big issue there, and apparently you and Ms. Bell have a disagreement on parking in Jefferson City.
You know, I'm usually known as the rhino or whatever, and Stephanie's the right-wing insane person. But, I mean, I didn't know she had a Hamlin sickle flag up in her office. I couldn't believe that she is for the government harassing you. I guess I'm just too conservative.
But aren't you a socialist? You want us to pay so you can park for free? Isn't that kind of social?
No, I want you to cut taxes and fire. I want to be your meter maid.
There was a little bit of Twitter beef happening the other night, I noticed, between Stephanie and Scott.
I'm not. Look, Stephanie's a highly trained lawyer, big city radio personality. I'm just a simple white trash hillbilly. I don't get to be right in these debates very often, but I am so right about this.
But when Stephanie's not here, I get to be right. All right, let's move forward because we only have a limited amount of time. We know about parking in Jefferson City. Missouri, this is so cool what you guys are doing. Missouri Times, 30 under 30. We're doing this in conjunction with Soybean Association. When is this happening?
Going to happen Monday, September 12th. Every year we try to honor 30 young people in politics. Folks work their tail off for very little money, serving the state, working on campaigns, being involved. We honor them, and as part of that, a political figure allows us to roast them. And this year, the person we're roasting is our very own Columbia State Senator Caleb Rowden. Can you imagine the wonderful material? Christian rock band, conservative caucus, that haircut he used to have. Oh, my God. It's going to be great. We'll break a little more news here. We are going to have a special guest roaster come up all the way from Jobland, Ron Richard, former Senator Ron Richard's coming up from Jobland. He is going to tell some jokes about Caleb, and I will tell you right now, he'll steal the show. Caleb Jones will be the funniest. He always is. But Ron Richards is going to steal the show. It's going to be a great time. We've got a charity that Caleb has picked. We're going to give some donations to. It's going to be a lot of fun, making fun of Caleb, honoring young folks in politics.
You know, Brandon's birthday is in January, and for probably the last 6 months, he's been dropping not-so-subtle hints to Steph and I that he wants to have a roast for his birthday. So maybe we should take notes.
I mean, I can't think of a better way to spend a cold January night than just completely skewering the man with the baritone voice of Columbia. I tell you what, I'm in, and I think we can make this happen. The problem is we'll have so many people that probably want to roast him. Like the line will be out the door a little bit. And
I'm looking at you, Marsh. I see you're already writing stuff down, aren't you? But just so you know, as we wrap up here, so Caleb Rowden, he has agreed to do this. That's coming up in September. Missouri Times, the MissouriTimes.com. Do we still have tickets available?
Absolutely. Hop on our website, Facebook page. Let us know you're coming because the turnout of these things becomes so large. You almost have to manage how many drinks you have and food. So let us know, but we'd love to have anybody that wants to come honor these young folks that work very hard. And obviously make fun of Caleb. I mean, it's just such a target-rich environment.
30 under 30. We're celebrating young people in politics, which is big. I know you listen to Wake Up Mid-Missouri on KWOS and 93.9 The Eagle, and we're big on messaging to a younger generation because, you know, there's going to be a time, Scott, when me and Marsh and you we're going to be gone. We got to get this intelligent message to other folks.
It'll be Gussie's time.
Gussie's time. Young Gussie Faughn in the studio with us this morning. Thank you so much. Scott, thanks for coming in. We appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, coming up about 5 minutes from now, maybe we'll dip into the 93.9 The Eagle KWOS listener mailbag. See what folks are saying via email and text. 874, and they're rolling in. 874-9390.
abortion because they are pro-choice, and a lot of the zero tolerance when it comes to these states has a lot of people freaked out. I think the 15 weeks seems to be, even if you're the most pro-life person, your neighbor probably isn't. So how do you govern?
Brian Kilmeade on Fox with a good point. This came up Friday, Columbia Pachyderm meeting. You're talking about, listen, we know how the majority of us feel regarding abortion. And obviously, this is a conversation that's been thrust into the forefront following the Supreme Court decision earlier this summer. But again, when it comes down to elections, the majority of Americans and how they are going to vote, and don't get mad. And I even had to say this. It was almost an uncomfortable moment Friday at the Pachyderms. I said, like, don't get mad. But polling has, even prior to the Supreme Court decision, polling has shown for a lot of years now, the majority of Americans are okay with some type of abortion. I'm not saying willy-nilly abortion. Oh, I went and made a mistake. I'm not talking about that. And it's going to matter, I think. Brian Kilmeade saying as such. I think it's going to matter coming up in the next elections. And here, because listen, and here's the other thing you can do is you can look at the polls for what polls are worth. Always got to throw in that qualifier, but for what polls are worth. We were all talking, all of us smart people talking about a big red wave coming up in November. And then look at the numbers since the Supreme Court decision earlier this summer. Listen, there's a whole lot of folks, including Brian Kilmeade and Coulter, as a matter of fact, saying kind of the same thing yesterday, saying as much. Yeah, we're not so sure about this, the big red wave that we had been talking about. Welcome into the show. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. There's John Marsh. Producer Hannah is here.
What up?
My name is Branden Rathert. Marsh, you kind of surprised by the news from Scott Faughn, Missouri Times, saying there's a group of folks apparently going to meet in the governor's office, 10 o'clock. I guess kind of a surprise in that we hadn't heard about it, but I thought it was interesting the way Scott Faughn from the Missouri Times posed it in talking about, and listen, I know I happen to personally like Governor Mike Parson, but he talked about in the trenches, you know, we think being a great leader. Here's what Democrats think being a great leader is.
See, the answer is not defund the police. It's fund the police.
That's what Democrats think. That's a great leader. Wait a minute. All these past couple of years, you've been about defunding the police, and now all of a sudden you have this great campaign idea, fund the police. That's what a lot of less intelligent people think he is a great leader. But I thought Scott Faughn was very poignant in his point. A great leader is somebody who is in the trenches talking to everybody, all sides, everywhere. And it did honestly remind me of Reagan. I mean, right? That's what Reagan was known for, right? So that was one of the things Scott Faughn talked about. Also, he talked about 30 under 30 celebrate. And I love this, again, because younger people messaging to a younger generation. And I'll go back to, by the way, incidentally, and I don't want to have a big discussion about abortion. I don't think you're going to change anybody's minds, nor am I going to change anybody's mind. Again, back to some of these polling numbers for what polling is worth is older folks like Marsh start to die.
Wow. Wow.
John, we roast the ones we love.
That's kind of like saying no offense, but
yeah, we roast the ones we love. Caleb Rowden, he's going to be roasted this event, Missouri Times. It's coming up a couple of weeks from now. But I will tell you, is we encourage younger people to get out and vote. We had on Mizzou College Republicans earlier this week. Polling / as it relates to abortion, especially this younger generation coming up, they are okay with some type of abortion to a greater extent than the general population is, and if that's who we're going to be messaging to, that is something to keep in mind. 874-9390, 874-9390. Biden, fiery, angry speech last night. And you can take this. I like producer Hannah's take on this, especially this particular statement.
Where the hell are we?
And so you know what he was trying to say, right, John? Yeah. Where are we as a nation? We're so blah, blah, blah. Well, our economy's in the toilet. People are getting kicked out of their homes. And now Joe's even affecting the dogs in a story we highlighted yesterday. From Unchained Melodies, local dog rescue place. She said, well, more and more people getting kicked out of their homes. Now Joe's went and affect the dogs.
Where the hell are we?
But you could take that literally.
Yeah, I think he's probably forgotten where he is, and he's just asking his staffers to help him out. Right.
As with this statement.
What the hell's the matter with us?
Couldn't he say?
Oh, boy.
He's trying to say that as a country. What's the matter with us as a whole? Wink, wink. He means us smart people.
What the hell's the matter with us?
Couldn't he say that about his party's ideas right now?
What the hell's the matter with us?
Free college and this and that, and what the hell's wrong with us? I think we could be saying that.
I don't know. Should I write him? I feel like I should maybe write him a thank you letter for, forgiving my student loans.
Letters. I get letters.
All right, we don't get any letters.
So many letters.
We get texts.
A whole bunch of letters.
Facebook messages.
I'd even read mail from a cow.
Text number 874-9390. 874-9390. We pretty much do. We share. And by the way, whenever you text Wake Up Mid-Missouri, we really do go to great lengths to whether we're responding on air to what you're saying or personally responding to your text. I think we really do a good job. And when I say we, I mean producer Hannah does a really good job of keeping up with that stuff. Anything that's really sparking your fancy this morning?
So we were talking earlier with Scott Faughn about how you really want to do a roast for your birthday in January. And you've been dropping some not-so-subtle hints to Stephanie and I, both on air and off air, about how you really want to have this quote-unquote celebrity roast.
I never said the word celebrity, though. I never said that.
So Kyle texted us. He said, I called dibs on first ticket to Brandon's roast.
Well, I like if Caleb Rowden, and it's something I've just always thought would be fun, but it would have to be, and I don't want it to be about me. If you make it for a charity or something like that.
Wait, you don't want a roast to be about you.
I want to do a roast, but
that'll make a lick of sense.
But talk about like everybody else except for me. But we get a couple of our friends together. We go to I don't know, Marsh Rose Music Hall, or maybe the new outdoor amphitheater. Yeah. Go there and you bring in people like Caleb Rowden. You get Sarah Walsh.
I'm sure the governor would show.
You get Governor Mike to show up. You get people like the sheriff in Boone County, Chris Arps.
Some of our coworkers would be there in a heartbeat, like the star of the Gary Nolan show, Brian Hansen.
I think it'd be cool, and get a couple of us together, and people can buy a ticket for $5, and we give it to charity. I don't know.
Can we sell T-shirts with goofy pictures of you on it?
We could do that. I think there'd be endless possibilities. I want to highlight something Susan brought up earlier. We're talking about voter turnout in mid-Missouri, and I guess I'm the only one, and I'll own up to it. Maybe I had unreasonable expectations to think that we would have a better voter turnout in the primaries earlier this month, and I get it. August, primaries, I get it. But when you have people talking incessantly, whether it's in the news or whether it's on the streets, people talking about the U.S. Senate race, and you only have 1 out of every 5 voters roughly show up and vote. To me, it says a lot of us talk out of our rear ends and we don't show up at the polls. Yeah. Yeah. And I'll go back to what Scott Faughn said, too, a kind of political apathy right now. One of our biggest topics on the show here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri yesterday, which carried, by the way, 6 o'clock this morning, our text was fired up. Hannah, what was the majority of people texting about 6 o'clock in the morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri?
Was it the movie Grease?
It was mooning. It was mooning. We were talking about mooning on the show yesterday, whether that's something that kids nowadays do. Listener Chris said, hey, heard y'all talk about mooning and sent us this clip.
We have pictures of you so-called mooners. And just because the pictures aren't of your faces doesn't mean we can't identify you.
And so we asked Chris, he says, I think it's from the movie Grease. And then somebody said, no, I think that's from Porky's. And listeners by the droves fact-checked us at 874-9390. I said, no, it wasn't Porky's. It was indeed Grease. So when things like that happen, that's what everybody was wanting to talk about this morning, mooning. And whether or not they did it in the movie, which movie it came from.
It always cracks me up.
You said cracks me up.
I didn't even do that on
Points.
purpose.
Give Hannah some points.
Look at me. I'm good.
All right.
It cracks me up how fast our Wake Up family is to correct us when we're wrong. And it's humorous to me, but I also appreciate it because they're looking out for us.
Yeah, and they get what we do here.
Yeah.
Off the text, CCP in Jefferson City has the perfect venue space for a roast. Might be something to think about. Anyhow, Susan's text. We were talking about voter turnout, only 1 out of 5. So Susan asked a really good question. What percentage of eligible citizens actually register to vote? So for the past hour and a half, I've been doing the math on this, and I'm still not so sure I have the right answer. But I thought a really good question. We talk about voter turnout. 1 out of every 5 folks turning out to vote in a primary. What's the number of the people that are eligible to vote compared to how many are registered to vote? I think it got some math. We're going to cover that
Missouri driver's license, a Missouri non-driver's license, federal issued ID like a passport or a military ID, or something else that's issued by either the state of Missouri or the federal government with an expiration date on it.
That's Boone County Clerk Brianna Lennon chatting with ABC 17. We have a new law that went into effect Sunday regarding got to show an ID to vote. And I have not seen Twitter nor have I seen Facebook block this misinformation, especially from the NAACP in Missouri. Disenfranchises voters. It's making it more difficult to vote. I don't see any of the social media is blocking that misinformation because it is absolutely not true. Brianna Lennon, so I have a chat with her. Susan brought up a great question. We talk about voter turnout. So I'm trying to do the math here. Math ain't my skill set. I'm much gooder at English than I am at math. But Susan asked, okay, what percentage of the eligible population is registered to vote? So I just did numbers for Boone County. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, there's 144,000 people that are 18 plus in Boone County. Of those 144,000 people that are 18 plus, 123,000 are registered to vote in Boone County. The math roughly
comes out to about 85%.
So I would think ideally you want to say, oh, it should be 100%. But then again, you're talking about there's people that can't register to vote for various reasons. So I don't know, but maybe that's at least kind of some kind of starting point for you.
Here's a big old serving of leftovers. Enjoy.
All right, some leftovers. We're going to open up the refrigerator, take a peek inside, and see if there's anything worth dishing out here in Leftovers on Wake Up Mid-Missouri before we make way for the Gary Nolan Show. Hannah, anything stirring your fancy for leftovers today? Anything we didn't get to in the show that might be worth covering?
Not that I'm aware of.
I know. I think we got it all. Right?
I don't know about that.
Well, maybe we didn't.
I'm sure we missed something.
We may have. I do want to highlight this. We probably should have put this in the listener mailbag. Got a phone call yesterday from a newer listener to Wake Up Mid-Missouri on 104.5 News Radio, KWOS, and 93.9 The Eagle, and was asking them, I'm like, okay, so what is it that you do like about the show? Because you get a lot of people say, I love the show. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to new listener Bill. Thank you for texting us, 874-9390. And we like to ask, Hannah gives me crap when somebody says, oh, I love the show. And I'll ask why.
It just,
I know
I understand why you do it, but at the same time, it's kind of awkward because it feels like you're fishing for a compliment right in front of the person.
Right. And I get that. But I'm doing it because you get a lot of people say, oh, man, I love the show. And I say, well, what is it that you like about Wake Up Mid-Missouri? And they'll say, especially when Brian Hansen chimes in. I'm like, okay, so you don't listen to Wake Up Mid-Missouri. You got shows mixed up. That's why I like to ask, just for a little bit of clarification. This is a guy by the name of, and see, now I don't even want to play his phone call. Now I feel embarrassed, like I really, because he's bragging on us. So maybe I'll save it for tomorrow.
Sorry to ruin your shtick.
Oh, that's okay. You're not ruining it. The point being, we appreciate your kind comments, and we appreciate you, because, and I do want to highlight this also. Capital City Productions in Jefferson City, somebody suggested we do a roast there. And also, before we wrap up, Scott Faughn, Missouri Times, they're part of this group that's doing the roast for Caleb Rowden. Scott Faughn texted, he says, pick a charity, and I'll write the first $500 for the roast.
Oh boy, maybe this is going to happen.
And that would be why I would do it again. It's not, I don't want it to be about me. I just always thought it would be fun. And I think the charity that I would pick would be Big Brothers Big Sisters. I've been working to get back. Something I did years ago in Idaho. And Big Brothers Big Sisters, part of the reason, apparently the city is taking their money from them, and they're going to give it to homelessness, which is BS. But it's a program where you can help, if kids start to encounter problems, this is how you can help stop it. That's what I would choose. Gary Nolan Show is coming up next. See ya.